How did we go from this to this? In our last video, we took you on a tour of Bebe. We showed you our living space inside, where the bed, shower, kitchen, wardrobe, washing machine, fridge, freezer, all of that jazz was laid out and what it looks like. This time round, we thought we'd tell you a little bit about the build process. So how did we take an ex-military MAN HX60 and convert it into our home on wheels? Well, back in 2020, during the middle of COVID, Jess was 6 months pregnant, and we thought it was a really good plan to buy an army truck. Not the most obvious thing, you might imagine, but we had an idea to drive around the world. So we hit up the normal sites, the Jacksons and Withams, and we looked at Brightwell's as well, which is actually the MOD disposal site. And that is essentially where we bought Bebe from. She was plain canvas, green, military truck. She'd done 6,500 kilometers, and she seemed like an absolute great bargain, not least because she also had the hydraulic winch. She was the winch variant of the truck. We collected her from Brightwell's, had her transported on a low loader up to Motorcraft Adventure Developments in Doncaster, and then we had to wait. We had to wait until just about December 2020 when our build slot came available. And from there, Motorcraft set about working their magic. They started by stripping everything off. The flatbed went, the canvas went. Even Ian, the owner of the company, spent a lot of time power blasting and chemical cleaning the chassis to get rid of the inches and inches of wax oil that had been built up in her previous life. That meant she was completely clean and ready to go, and they sprayed her. They did the chassis prep, gave a nice anti-rust treatment, and then sprayed her all so that she was nice and well protected. Now, we'd been talking to them for quite a while. We'd come up with the idea of an alcove box, and you saw the alcove, it's Isla's play space. We feel that that just tied the front and back of the truck together. It almost feels, particularly the HX60, without the alcove, it's like two separate units. It doesn't look like it was designed to be all in one. And then we talked about dimensions, and we ended up with 5.6 meters, which we think is probably about the maximum length you can go on an HX60. That's 5.6 meters without the alcove. Beyond that, you start ending up in too much of a rear overhang. It impinges your departure angle, and it just kind of looks a bit wrong. It looks a bit too tail heavy. In terms of width, we are 2.5 meters wide, so we're as wide as we could be to fit on the base. And the height, I'm 6'4", and I've got good few centimeters over my head. I think our internal height's a little bit over 2 meters. So that gives us an overall all-up height of 3.95 meters when you take into account the air conditioning up on the roof. Now, in terms of the systems, Motorcraft built all of the box, fit the windows, the safari hatch, the door, all of that, and they also fitted all of the Victron system. So we have a full Victron system for electrics. We've got 4 200 amp hour lithium ion batteries. We've got a 5 kVA Victron Quattro inverter. We've got obviously the MPPTs and all of that jazz. On the roof, we don't have Victron panels because at the time they weren't as powerful as we could get elsewhere. So we've got JA Solar 495 watt panels. There's 4 of them, giving us the best part of 2 kilowatts. If that's not enough power, or early or late in the year in higher or lower latitudes, we also run a backup generator. So we've got a Champion 3.5 kilowatt generator, little petrol generator, which is brilliant because it's not built in. If it ever breaks, we can just pull it out of the locker, go buy another one and stick it in. It's also significantly cheaper than things like the Whispers, which, while phenomenal and nice and quiet, are also ridiculously expensive. In terms of our water, we carry 500 litres of fresh water, and that is stored inside the body. In fact, it's right under where I'm sitting now, at the front of the box. It runs across the body, so weight distribution is even, and it's baffled nicely internally as well, so we don't get a pendulum of effectively the best part of half a tonne of water sloshing back and forth. We don't have any black water as such because we have a separate tiny composting toilet. So it's a separating toilet. Fluids go forwards into a bottle. We can tip that out pretty much anywhere. Solids go to the back in a bag. We can chuck a bit of sawdust in there or the like, and then take that bag, seal it up and dispose of that appropriately. On the back of the truck, we have got a tail lift. The tail lift has, firstly, the spare wheel. We didn't like the location of the spare wheel as it was in the military because it exits out to the side. So depending on where you are in the world, that may mean that you have to tip a wheel out into the main carriageway, which is less than ideal. It's also hard if you're on a narrow track and you need to get the wheel out. You've got no space to swing a wheel out to the side. So we had the wheel moved around to the back on that rear tail lift, and that's mounted down nice and low. And then we've got some storage lockers on there, and it's also where we store our bikes, so that we've got some local mobility when we get to towns or cities that we can't necessarily drive into or find somewhere to park in. For example, if we want to go and do shopping, we have got the capability to do that with our e-bikes. In terms of the rest of the changes, I guess the biggest one, and the one that everyone wants to know about, is that we changed our fuel tank. By default in the army they come with a 300 litre fuel tank, but we figured that probably wasn't going to be big enough, so we switched that out. Motorcraft took that off and replaced it with a 450 litre tank for us. We are in fact fairly soon going to get another fuel tank added, hoping it's going to be somewhere around 150, 160 litres, which would just be a nice little backup. Nominally it will run our diesel heater, but we'll have the ability to switch it over to the main tank if we needed to. If, for example, we need a bit of extra range, or if worst happens and someone comes along and steals all the fuel from our main tank, hopefully they won't also see this backup tank that we're having fitted. The locker storage around the vehicle was another thing added by Motorcraft. They put the side skirts on to create a nice enclosed look with the lockers, and those lockers are used for storing various things. So our water pipes, for our hose pipe for filling up water, our hookup cable if we decide we want to hook up, if we happen to go to a campsite and we want to charge our batteries. We also store shoes. We've got a locker with shoes. Shoes, side note, are a really awkward thing to store because they don't stack or pack very nicely. So shoe storage, if you're in the process of build, think about shoe storage. Think about where you're going to keep your shoes, and maybe come up with a specifically tailored place for them. It's something we didn't do and kind of wish we had. As far as the rest of the outside, it's pretty standard. I said it was been painted. The wheels are the standard military wheels, so they're running Continental HCS 14R20s. Yes, we know that Michelin ZXLs are a better off-road tyre, but they are also noisier on the road. And the reality is, and this is going to be controversial, most Overland vehicles don't spend as much time fully, truly off-road as you might imagine. A lot of it is road or rough road. So having a really, really, really super specialist off-road tyre doesn't make sense in our mind for when you're spending probably 75% of your time on roads and rough roads, where a Continental HCS is way more than capable enough. And then, yes, we might sacrifice a little bit of off-road capability, but so far it's not been as much of a hindrance as you might imagine. The box, this 5.5 metre box with the alcove that we talked about, well, that is mounted onto the chassis using a multi-point torsion-free subframe. Yes, we could have built onto the flatbed of the HX60, and we did consider it. At one stage we talked about building onto the flatbed so we could remove it and effectively have a self-contained little cabin that we could pop down. It's a nice idea, but we concluded that we didn't necessarily need that. And actually we know that the flatbed of the HX60 does twist. If you put a reasonable amount of wheel articulation in, you will get torsion through that flatbed body, and that will in turn put torsion through your habitation body. So yes, you could build a nice rigid box that would withstand that, but then you're adding more weight, maybe you're adding a bit more complexity. And so for us, we decided that it was better to build on an anti-torsion subframe, with the fringe benefit that actually we get slightly better wheel articulation than we would have done previously if we'd built onto the flatbed, which means in theory we should be slightly better off-road than the military have them with that flatbed mounted on there. Time will tell, but so far we are very happy with our decision. And we know there are people out there running them built on the flatbed and they're very happy too. I think the reality is there is no right answer. You pay money, take choice, build yourself, whatever it is, but they're both a series of compromises and you choose what's going to suit you the best. So that's it really. That is a look around Bebe in terms of the build process. Timescales, as I said, the build started in December 2020. It was mostly finished with interior, which was not done by Motorcraft, but was done by a company called Off Grid Campers in Cambridgeshire. By the time it had been to them and then come back to Motorcraft for the finishing off and the painting and whatever, it was mostly finished by about September 2021. So it was kind of 9 or 10 months, but the reality is these things are never finished. We're always finding little things we want to tweak or modify or update or change as our needs change, as we travel to new areas, as we spend more time in it. You never get it perfectly right first time. And in fact, you shouldn't, because your needs should change and you should have the ability to modify your design, your build, to suit your changing needs. It just gives you more longevity. So if you've got any questions, feel free to hit us up in the comments or drop us a message, and we will happily do our best to answer them. And also please remember to hit the like and subscribe button down below, because that really helps us. And we will see you in the next video. Bye for now.